Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another Tuesday afternoon show. We're switching it around, and just because we can, we are. But
because
welcome back.
We have the power.
That's right. Welcome to another episode of Live here on Keystroke Medium. I am Josh Hayes here with Chuck Manley and Scott Moon. Corey Gillen was first in the chat. He says, "Sweet, made it in time," which I applaud very much. You get the
well done, Corey.
Lou was almost first, but almost first is, I mean, damn near last. So
it's like second, it's like hand grenades.
First,
right.
Second is the first loser.
That's right.
Ricky Bobby. Okay, Ricky Bobby.
Hey, Ricky Bobby.
Thomas, you can drive with a cougar. You can drive anything.
Help me, Oprah Winfrey. Great
Help
movie,
Tom
by the way. I just want to throw this out there before we get the show started. I'm having some internet problems on my end, and even though I am hardwired with a fiber optic connection, I don't understand why I'm having these disconnect glitches. So
Russians.
If the show is all it's probably
AT&T,
the Russians,
baby. AT&T.
Yeah. I think I did that right.
Scott has a nice sheen of sweat on his face.
Yes, he does. His name is actually pronounced Scoot Sweaty Moonay.
Scoot Sweaty
Exactly
Moonay.
Right now, actually, that's like 3 layers of dried sweat because it's like sweat, dried, sweat, dried, sweat, dried.
Yes, I dare you to say that 3 times really fast. Let's see. Lauren's in the chat. Kayleen's in the chat. Lauren just discovered a container of chocolate cake.
What?
Interesting.
I'll be right over.
Interesting.
That's like finding a $20 bill in a pair of pants, man.
Especially in a pair of pants that's not yours.
Yeah. Well.
Not my pants. Wait, they're my pants. I got $20 in them.
That's right. Well, Facebook users here. Welcome. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good morning, Facebook users.
Facebook user, my personal favorite.
Facebook is so dumb. I don't understand why they just don't show the name. It's weird.
Who's dumb?
Thanks, StreamYard.
I got my YouTube pop-out chat open, and then I closed it because that would be efficient.
Well done. Well
Good
done.
job. Thank you. You're welcome.
Welcome, everybody. I hope everybody's not too thrown off by the weird time. We've had some discussions about switching up the time from 10 a.m. to maybe the afternoon. So maybe we'll continue this time on a different day or
to honor lit RPG as a burgeoning new genre that's all of our role-playing game friends, we're just going to roll a die 20 and that's when we'll do the show.
Yeah
Got it right here.
Speaking of role-playing games, I played this fantastic game this weekend. It's called Star Trek Ascendancy, and it's a huge game, and I don't know if I've talked on the show before. I've only played it twice. But the game is super long. We played with 7 people, and
that's the Starship strategy war game kind of thing, right?
Yeah. You start
I've
out with your home planet, and then you branch out, and
you can buy the little ship miniatures for it and stuff.
Yeah, well, my buddy 3D prints all of his, so he's got like 3D printed ships, 3D printed space stations, and a whole bunch of other.
Right.
That's like
nice.
Geek level. Plus 20 or something.
He's even got his own like Starfield table mat that we play.
What's more nerdish than buying? I mean that in a good way. Than buying figurines for your game. 3D printing.
Making figurines.
Yes,
that's right.
That is hardcore.
Are those the Nerd Barrage guys or some of them?
Yeah, Matt Lowe and who else? Brent Johnson was over there. Mike Lieber was over there. Couple other guys that we know. It's interesting because normally we play with like 5 or 6, but we had 7 because I was the late yes I'll play, because it's one of those like when you type out your text and then don't hit send, but you're like I sent it.
Oh yeah,
it's fine.
Yeah.
And then I came back.
Right now.
I came back and I was like I did not send. So there when I sent the day before the game was supposed to play, and Matt was like, yeah, sure, come on. Well, apparently I didn't send it at enough time because he invited somebody else. Well, then he didn't want to disinvite me, so I got to come anyway. And so we had like a 7.5, 8-hour game.
That's what he told you.
That's
what he told you. He probably was like, man, I hope Josh doesn't want to play. I guess I'll send this to him.
I haven't heard from him. Awesome.
No, I asked him. He said, well, we were only supposed to play with 6 and we had 7, but he didn't call me out. And I said, is that because I waited too long to say yes? And he goes, yes. Yes, that's why.
That would be correct. Affirmative.
Well, it's a fun game. It takes a while, and with 7 people, like you play and you have like a 5-minute, 10-minute deal where you do your thing, and then you just sit around everybody else to move, and it's like, but it's super fun. Let's see. What have I been doing other than that? I'm back into Tranquility 2, the manuscript. Devin and I are jumping back into it this week. I finished a chapter this morning, and then what we're going to do, I think, is kind of start tackling the edits together and just kind of work through everything together until the book's done. I can't remember when the first book is. The first book is up on pre-order now, and I think it's June something. And so we have a couple of months, about a month and a half to get book 2 done and to the editor. So it'll be ready because they're wanting to do they're trying to do 30 to 45 days for the book 2. And hopefully we'll be able to hit it for book 3 as well. But that's what I'm working on. Got some good work done in Savage Stars last week and yesterday. Not Savage Stars. Started the Gray Man book 9, which I'm not digging the first person present tense. But I'm slogging through it because apparently book 10, it goes back to third person. And I really, really like the third person. And I've talked about it before, but I really, really enjoy the Gray Man. And if you like thrillers at all, I think you'll love this book. It's interesting because
this is approaching like Sanderson Take a Shot.
It really is. It really is approaching Sanderson Take a Shot status. Because I haven't talked about Sanderson in a long time.
You haven't, but you brought this guy up the last 4 or 5 shows.
Should we start a new game? I think
Sanderson is going to be wounded. He's probably hurt. He's probably not going to watch the show anymore.
He's going to see this in a week.
He's not going to watch the show. That's right. He's not going to watch the show anymore just because of that. It's really good. I really enjoy it. Scott is going to start reading it here in the next couple
I'm about
of
halfway
days.
through the first book and I'm liking it so far. It's very interesting.
Well, I guess I'll have to join the club, and then we can talk about it.
Do it.
Yep. I'll get it.
We can rename the show The Gray Man on Mondays.
Tom says, "No, Sanderson, who are you, and what have you done with Josh?"
With Josh Hayes. The beard's a dead giveaway. It's not him.
That's right. I'm a bearded alien impersonator. That's all. That's all I had going on this week. Chuck, you want to give your update next?
Usual stuff. Probably 10 to 20,000 words away from the end of JD Book 2. Daughter had some softball tryouts for a local travel team, and she murdered it quite nicely.
Nice.
And she's actually, even though she's going to be in the 8th grade next year, she's actually trying out for the junior varsity for the high school next week or week after.
Very cool.
Nice.
And so got that, helping her stay warmed up and on her toes for that. And my son has got his very first job interview today for the summer.
Nice.
At my wife's favorite Mexican joint. So that's going to work out nicely if he gets it.
So whose idea really was it?
Actually, it was his. It was actually his. One of his really good friends from high school works there, a kid named Jamarian. And actually, his name's Jamarian. They call him Jam. He's a fellow tuba player. And I liked his name so much. He's actually I'm going to name a character in this thriller idea I've got in the back of my mind. I'm going to name him Jamarian Haygood. Or Special Agent Jamarian Haygood. And he got the nickname Jam because he was a football player for Alabama. So
that's legit.
And nice. that kid is like, when are you going to write that, Mr. Chuck? When are you going to write that? I want to read that. I'm like, probably about the time you're graduating college. So chill.
Let's talk about my scheduling.
Relax, kid. I'm way behind. He's a good kid, though.
Yep. See, now you have to write it.
Oh, I have to write it now.
Ruin his whole life. If you don't
Absolutely.
Write it
Even if it's just a novella, it's got to be something out there for him. But that's about it. Just family and getting the work in where I can.
Every time Chuck talks, it reminds me. Remember the movie Parenthood with Steve Martin and all those?
I don't remember that movie.
You don't remember that? There's a scene where
I've never seen that movie.
So it's called. I think it's called Parenthood. And Steve Martin, he's got his kids, and then like Martin. No, not Martin Short. What's the guy that plays a sidekick in Ghostbusters, the first one?
Oh, Rick Moranis.
Rick Moranis, and has his kids. And so Rick Moranis' kids, he brings out this big sheet of dots, and there's all these little different colored dots. It's like, probably hundreds of dots. And it's like, and he's flashing these cards like that. And this kid who's like 5 is telling him that one's a prime number, that one's a prime number, that one's a prime number. And Steve Martin looks at his kid, and his kid's eating the dots. Overall,
I've forgotten about that movie.
He's eating the dots, and it's like goes up to his kid and says, "I feel sick. Do you need to throw up?" "Yeah, blood." And just
right on his shoes.
Good
nice.
That's a good one. That's a classic.
There's a bunch of good scenes in there and stuff like that. So,
what about you, Scott? What about your updates?
Let's see. So, lots of writing, not high word counts. A little discouraged on that, but I've been doing lots of production, editing, trying to get stuff done, and just dealing with some sleep fatigue and issues and stuff. But I did get the final versions of Blue Sun Armada done, sent off to the book formatter.
Nice.
I went ahead and used, just in case my book formatter was busy, I used Vellum, and I banged out a version to put up, because KDP's been really wonky this week, and so I put up a version so that if it gets published and I don't get it anything else, then it won't be like a blank copy. Because a couple of days there I couldn't get into it. It would say error no matter what you did. And then also a lot of people have noticed this week, if you search for your book at Amazon, you won't find it.
I've heard a lot of people talking about that.
Yeah. I searched in almost none of my books I could find. And then I looked at other writers and writers groups, and it was just whole swaths, dozens of people I knew who said, yeah, you can't find your books. Now, the funny thing is you could find them if you search for them through Google. You could still find your book on Amazon. And most people I've talked to said it did not affect their sales in any way, which is weird. But if you think about it,
think it would.
But you think about it, what does that say? That says that people are not searching for your book specifically. They're searching for a general type of book and then buying your book when they find it.
Yeah, that could be.
If your sales if not being able to search for your specific book doesn't affect sales, I mean, that says something.
Either that
Somebody
or they're
smart
just searching directly on Amazon or Google.
They could be searching on Google. There's lots of
following
different variables, obviously, but that was kind of terrifying and interesting at the same time. Working real hard on Orphan Wars 3, and working at work and just doing all the things.
Yeah.
So good stuff. I had something else to say, but the parenthood joke made me, I lost my train of thought. I was probably going to make fun of Josh's beard thing, but I can do that anytime.
It's coming in quite nicely.
I can do that anytime. So yeah. Oh, and I guess the last thing is I'm trying to decide what to do with the audiobook for Blue Sun Armada, because I was going to launch it and then see how well it sold and use that as leverage to bargain for a book. So I'm going to chop around a little bit for that. Orphan Wars came out on audiobook. Flight of the Reaper, the 4th Reaper book, finally came out on audiobook, I think today, which only took like a year and a half. That was a whole nother topic. But Tom.
Hello. I think
Tom.
You roboted, Scott.
I think I froze. Did I freeze?
Yeah.
Yep.
It must be Kansas.
I was frozen on my end.
It's got to be Kansas.
It's got to be Kansas.
The Russians are invading Kansas.
Ain't gonna get very far.
Yeah, no. They'd be stopped by what's that? Some comedian says, you don't need the Marines. You just have a line of rednecks and beer guns and shotgun shells to running them off. So
I mean, he's not wrong.
He's not. He's not. When they had the tornado in Greensburg, a bunch of my cop buddies went there to help out. Said, I'm like, am I frozen? I don't know. They said that there were guns scattered for miles around this little town from the tornado, and they were so proud.
Yeah.
They're so proud.
Well, we're going to talk about a whole list of issues that we don't have, and and entertain our
issue number 1,
our grand audience.
Prepared we are.
It's Guy Anthony DeMarco's in the house. What's up, Guy? And Chris Hogshead is here. Good afternoon. Hello. Just read the blurb for Blue Sun. Can't wait to read it on the 26th. Nice.
I'm really excited about it. I can go on about it for a long time. It's kind of my passion project. It's the one you write and you just kind of lose track of time because you have so much fun with it. So I hope other people like it. If they don't, I'll be very sad.
Well, if the reception for your other books is any measure, I think it'll do very well.
I think it'll get out there.
Blue Sun Armada. There it is. I found it on Amazon today.
Yeah, I on Sunday I couldn't find it. Yesterday I was able to find it again, but yeah, because the first thing I go to, I always blame myself. I'm like, what did I do wrong? I did something that made Amazon mad, and now they've canceled my career.
I'm surprised you're not trying to use Amazon in a way that Amazon is not designed to use. So that's usually your MO.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, you just called Josh to fix it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Josh, can you just fix that for me? Call my people at Amazon.
Hey, we've been talking about Plottr a lot, and finally we have our affiliate code for Plottr. So if you're interested in checking it out, I think they do a 30-day free trial, money-back guarantee. But if you use this link and you end up purchasing it, we get a little bit of kickback for the show, and it just supports kind of what we do here with web hosting and podcast hosting and all that. Oh, and I got an email the other day. We hit 50,000 downloads on Podbean last week.
Nice.
For the show.
That's a
so
bunch.
all of you people out there lurking in the audio world, thank you so much for listening to the show. That's
absolutely
awesome.
We spread a lot of shenanigans and confusion with 50,000 downloads.
Shenanigans.
It's true. 50,000 downloads. Yeah, man.
I like Plottr too. We talked about it, and I think I'm using Plottr to work on Reaper Revenant, which is going to be we're going to do some more books in the last Reaper series, and I'm going to use Plottr exclusively. Josh is going to help me. He's going to be my accountability partner. He doesn't know it yet. He's going to keep me. He's going to keep me from starting writing until I have that line done.
I volunteer as tribute.
Yeah,
it's
going to be like tribute because you're going to feel my pain.
Yeah, I've actually been using it to get Jack Dark Book 3 kind of set up. So I'm hoping I won't take as long to get it out as I'm taking with this one. But hopefully there won't be another pandemic and everybody be home all the time. So that had a lot to do with it.
Summer is coming.
Yeah, but summer's not going to be bad for me now because even though the kids are home, they're of that age where they really don't need me for anything, especially since my son started driving. So, and my daughter wants to ride her bike everywhere. So she hates me. So she doesn't want to ride in the car with me.
Best thing can happen to you as a rider.
I'm kidding.
That's right.
Everyone hates me.
I could just alienate all the people I care about. Then I can get some writing done.
Get all the work done.
I went to my mom's house for Mother's Day, and my brother was there, and he and I were just talking. I hadn't talked to him in a while, and we were talking about just how things have changed as we've gotten older. And I'm like, yeah, my biggest ambition in life right now is just to be left the hell alone. That's
Isn't it weird you go through like your teens and even into your 20s and you're like, I want to go out, I want to hang out with people, and then you get over this little hump and you're like, yeah, I'll just stay here and
I just get pissed off if the doorbell rings or my phone rings.
If we lived in the same town and had a porch big enough for 3 swing chairs, we could all be out there.
Absolutely.
Blah, blah, blah.
Speaking of old movies, remember Grumpy Old Men?
Yep.
Yeah, me and my best friend were like, that's going to be us. We're just going to be, want to get drunk? Yeah.
Only time I get mad at the doorbell is when the kids are home, because then I have to beat them to the door and I'm yelling the entire way up the stairs, don't open the door. And
you're going to get kidnapped.
Yeah.
just it's a package. Just let me get it.
My problem is I got these dogs that just go absolutely ape shit. I got 3 of them, and one of them's that big hound dog. So when he barks, the damn windows rattle. I mean, it's just, and that's what sets me off about the door, because I'll ignore it if it's just me. I mean, a lot of times I'll just put earplugs in, and I don't give a shit. So, Honey Badger don't give a shit.
Tom Hoddle says, Josh stands outside Scott's house at 4 a.m. with a bullhorn yelling, word count, mofo, did you reach it?
What's that?
Take one plot points.
I don't think it's the word count I'm worried about. It's the don't get off your plot point that I'm worried about.
Well, it's like, I'm going to outline this thoroughly, or I will outline the first 3 chapters and then just start writing for no reason.
Just go
exactly.
for it.
100%. And then 70%, and he's like, I don't know how I got over here, but I got over here.
But
this isn't where I wanted to be.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
You know, it's funny.
I've had to actually restart the end of Jack Dark 2 for exactly that reason, because I mean, from 2 to 3, there's essentially going to be this giant setting shift because 3 is going to take place far away from where they are now. And I've been trying to write it in such a way that that transition kind of makes sense and it doesn't seem forced. And I keep kind of going in the wrong direction. It's like twice now I've had to go back 5 or 6 or 7,000 words and redo stuff because it just wasn't going where I wanted it to go. So I totally get what you mean about getting off track.
You know, it's interesting. You mentioned setting, and that immediately made me think of, wait for it, the Gray Man series.
The Gray Man series.
And because every book takes place in a different city, like different geographical location. And
That's cool.
the first one takes place kind of all over the place and in Africa. And then the second one, oh, wait, is that the first one?
First one's seemed more like Eastern Europe, and
maybe
because he's trying to
the
get
second
to France.
Second one's Africa, and the third one is South America. We go to China, and then we go to America. Like, it's all over the place, right?
So he's like an international hitman kind of thing.
Yeah. But I mean, it's not like one book. It like like James Bond movies where you're like jumping to like multiple locations
in one
story. Yeah.
Yeah. This one's like more or less set in the same.
Like, this week I'm going to go to Mumbai and murder people, and this week I'm going to go to Johannesburg and murder people.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But the way I don't know, the way he kind of sets those places up, it's right now they're dealing with human trafficking in the Eastern Bloc, like Bosnia and Czechoslovakia and all those places. And the one before was took place in London for the most part. And it's really cool how he builds the stories and the setting at the same time and just lets you see these different places.
Yeah, that's the best way to do that. I mean, in my opinion, for a bit to build setting is you don't explain everything all at once. You just the reader learns about it as the character experiences it. I think that's the best way to handle that.
No, and I don't know. I think I've said it before, but I think this is one of the first book series that really doesn't have any info dumping at all. I mean, there was this book that I'm reading now has the first instance, I think, of info dumping that I've come across in the whole series, and it was basically the bad guy and like giving you how he got to where he was.
Right.
But most of the time he hadn't done that. Most of the time you just kind of learn it as the character learns it. But this time you basically the consortium in the ninth book is basically a collection of different people, groups, organizations that are all working under one, right? And so what he does is he tells the backstory of this guy to show you how he did it. And that was the first time he'd ever done it. It was the first time I've ever come across the lengthy info dump. It wasn't horrible, but just like
an info dump or like a not a flashback.
No, it wasn't a flashback. It was like the guy. This is how he got. Like he did this kind of finance, and he got into this business doing finance, and then realized that this and this would make him more money over this, and it showed his progression from just kind of laundering a little bit of money here and there to being in charge of this huge human trafficking empire and showing that. But I can't think of any other time in the book where they've actually spent time like that developing the antagonist. It usually comes through the story, like Deadeye, which I think is the third book. You don't realize who really the main antagonist is until like half the book. Like I kind of coming, but then when it happened, I was like, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense now. So it's interesting. I like we started talking about setting, but I like the way that he develops his his antagonist and his setting. He does it really well.
Yeah, in the what's his name? Not Larry Brooks. Larry Brooks. He does the story engineering. He talks about that when the antagonist is revealed, and he kind of has specific areas in the books, and that seems about right for what you're describing. He calls them pinch points, and that's where you kind of first get introduced to the antagonist, and then you get revealed who the antagonist is, and you can have red herrings and stuff before that, especially probably in thrillers. But
yeah, I think one of the interesting things about this series in thrillers in particular, and I think I've seen it in sci-fi, in mill sci-fi a little bit, but not to this extent, is that you see who the bad guy is, and why he's doing it, and the thing that's pushing you through the story is the how, not the why, and that's interesting.
It's less common in
that's
sci-fi.
Definitely more of a that's definitely that's a thriller trope, whether the thriller is sci-fi or otherwise. That's kind of the main difference between like thrillers and mysteries. Mysteries are, you don't know who the bad guy is, you don't know who done it.
Right.
But thrillers, you have that great kind of simultaneous storyline going between who the protagonist is, who the antagonist is, and it all builds up to their eventual collision.
And they're trying to stop
a
worse.
And in my opinion,
incident.
the best ones are when you're kind of like, you're not real sure who you want to win.
Yeah.
Because even though the bad guy's the bad guy, you're kind of like, I get it. I get why he's the bad guy. I mean,
one of the things
it's tough to pull off, though.
It is. Good thrillers are hard.
Well, especially if you build that type of empathy with the bad guy, where you're like, I can see what he's doing. Like it makes sense.
He shouldn't do that, but but I get it.
Yeah,
it's kind of like
I feel what Thanos is saying, but
it's too far. Just too far.
Too much Thanos. Back it down a notch, or 100.
Yeah.
Like I started watching the Yellowstone that you mentioned about the same time you started talking about Gray Man, and they're basically all bad guys. In that series.
Well, I mean, a lot. There's been a lot of that lately. I mean, let's face it, Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it changed the whole
I
dynamic.
I haven't watched all of it, but what I watched, there are no good guys in that thing.
Have you not read the books, Chuck?
I read up to whichever one had the red wedding. And
I think that's four.
Yeah,
is that three?
Because that's the last thing I remember reading.
I think it's. I want to say it's book 5.
But I only got through. I got part of the way through season 3 of the series, and something happened, and I just stopped watching it.
I've looked at the third book. I've wondered about that a lot and what I think I've come to the conclusion of why those are so popular is because there's lots of other things on a lesser scale where people you root for the bad guy, or you have your anti-hero who is clearly the protagonist but is also kind of an anti-hero. I think in some of these you're kind of looking for some sort of like a redemption story, or at least on some level.
Yeah.
Because one of the Beth is a character in Yellowstone, and I quickly had a really strong dislike for her, but
yeah, it doesn't go away.
Yeah, but there's the thing is, and then there's Rip, who's kind of her boyfriend. But as you learn about why they're connected, and there's like the reason I didn't like her is because one of the first times she has a moment with Rip, she kind of sets him up. He thinks they're having a tender moment, and he says, "You want to? Oh, maybe I could take you to a music festival." And she just lays into him and just completely unmans him, and it's a horrible scene. But as the story goes, some of the best movements in that series or scenes, there's a couple of times where you can tell Rip, who's a hardened killer, where he is getting ready to tell her something nice, but you can see kind of this nervous fear in his face because he knows she's going to cut him down, and he tells her. And then she kind of gives him a nice compliment instead. And it was a very well done moment. And it almost makes it worth all of that nastiness because you see kind of under the layer. If you're looking for
a couple of good shows I've seen where the long burn really is done well, or the slow burn is done well. Yellowstone is one of those. For All Mankind, I mentioned it when we were on the Writer's Journey last Friday. For All Mankind is a show on Apple TV. And the slow burn on that show is ridiculous. And I just want to point out, Guy says that Thanos was just angry that Disco died in 1975. What's up, Patricia? How are you? Welcome. One of the things I was going to say about what I've learned from, I always try to learn something from the series or the books that I'm reading, even the series that I watch on TV. And one of the things that I've noticed about my own writing and what I've learned from reading the Gray Man series is making it exponentially more difficult for the main character to accomplish what he's trying to accomplish.
Yeah.
And doing it in a way that is smart, but also having the character use his brain to solve the problem instead of just making an easy button solution for the character. One of the things it's tough because like you write it and I'm like, I want a little bit of conflict, but I don't want to spend a whole like chapter dealing with this conflict. Well, sometimes that's what the book needs. And a lot of things that happen in the Gray Man, you're like one of the things I can't remember which book it is, but he gets taken captive and he's got his hands tied behind his back in wires and he's getting electrocuted. And you're like,
there's at the bottom of the pit.
Yeah.
It's like the one in the first book. He's at the bottom of that pit and it like threw him down the hole.
I just bought the first book to listen to, so no spoilers.
No spoilers.
Yeah. But go ahead.
It's like that, but there's absolutely, even he knows that he's done. There's absolutely no way that he can get out of it. And then he manages to get out of it, and he almost does that from like chapter 1, and then continues to like just kick him in the nuts and just like throw him on the ground every chapter.
It's interesting you say that, and I want you to get back to what you're saying, but I want to put in a little thing. That's where I have a problem with outlining, because I'll do an outline and then I get to a point where the problem was too harder than I thought, and so I either have to gloss through it to stay on the outline, or I have to like take a detour and write 5 chapters of him trying to solve this problem.
Right.
Anyway, but go back.
I that's one of the things, like, for instance, going through Tranquility this morning in one of the chapters, we're trying to have the characters do a specific thing. And as I'm reading through the draft, I'm like, man, that's really easy button. How do I make that harder? And then I had spent some time this morning kind of thinking about how could I make that harder? But also, how could I make the character act so that he solves the problem instead of the problem just being magically solved for him,
or solved by a secondary character, which is can be very dangerous.
Exactly. Like, and specifically in this instance, an artificial intelligence solved the problem for him, and then he just kind of went through the motions of doing what the AI couldn't. But through reading again the Gray Man, I am focused now on the character specifically doing things to solve their own problem.
Yeah.
That's really important, and that's easy to lose track of that, because as a writer, I've made this mistake more than once, but you because you start justifying it internally. It's like, no, he's solving the problem. He really is. But but it's somebody outside the story goes, no, he's not solving the problem. He just kind of happens to be there.
Yep.
And that's like I think that's a fatal mistake. I think it really is for a story. Your hero has to be heroic, and they can't be heroic if everybody else is solving stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And it's I mean, it's good to have other characters that are providing information and providing feedback, and maybe they solve like a little portion of what you're trying to do, but I
also think it's okay if you do something, like if you have the MC do something that sets up his own salvation. Like if he tells a supporting character some piece of information or something, that suddenly, if that supporting character hadn't had that info, he wouldn't have been able to be where he needed to be to save him.
Right.
But bring him, because that's surreptitiously the main character helping himself.
Yeah, he's involved. He is still part of the solution.
Right. And
it might be, and that's a really good point too, because that's foreshadowing, rather than just having the cavalry show up at the end, or the his sidekick swoop in and pluck him off the planet with the spaceship. If
like
you
Gandalf showing up on the third day.
Yeah, but you foreshadow it. Hey, look to this on the third day.
It's true.
Why do you keep saying that? Just in case.
Just in case. supposed to be a really nice sunrise that day.
Tom says just say quantum before
and it's all
everything.
explained.
Yeah, quantum, pretty much. Yeah, we're going to use the quantum thing.
But I mean, I think that, you know, having secondary characters help the main character. Well, that's what I was going to say. Josh, was it you, Chuck, that made the post about the military characters?
I shared it from an urban fantasy group. Somebody else had written it, but I thought it would be a good conversation starter.
No, I think it was a great,
yeah,
a great conversation,
and
because
I thought it was that's a kind of a valid point, because we do, you know, and the argument that nobody wants to read about the support staff is very valid, but I do think there's this overwhelming tendency, both in our culture and our entertainment, that, you know, anybody with a military background is automatically a fucking operator and a commando and all this other stuff. And,
Right.
you know, and that's the way it's pushed. But the vast majority of vets I know, they weren't frontline guys. You know, they were support staff for the most part, and that gets overlooked a lot, I think.
There was a comedian back when I was a kid that had a routine, and that was in there. It's like, you never see a cook from Vietnam. Oh my God, pancakes!
Yeah, and there's also this tendency that people think that that somebody who goes through the military, whatever branch, they come out of it
A warrior.
some kind of polished superhero, not superhero, but just this sterling example of human potential and greatness, even if they went in as like a thug.
Yep.
And that is not true.
Right.
I'm sorry. You take a piece of shit and put them through basic and put them through training and put them in a uniform, you're just going to have a more efficient piece of shit coming out the other. Exactly. And, you know, and I think that's another thing that could be, you know, if you want a realistic depiction of veterans, you know, you got to keep stuff like that in mind. They don't all come out as nice guys. That's why we have Leavenworth.
I think that's definitely true. I ran into that before. My father-in-law, who's career military, he used to say that you could either party or go to church or be in the gym, basically. And he said pretty
much
him and all of his friends, they always went to church because nobody could hassle you when you're in church, so they never missed church.
Yeah.
Yep.
But and I've ran into people who get into trouble when they're on leave because they're getting drunk and doing crazy stuff. But just to be difficult, there is a lot of people who do change their situation going to, like,
there are. I'm not saying
it gets them out of a bad situation.
But I just think there's a certain stereotype, particularly among people who have never served.
Well, it is because, like, Jack, what's Reacher? Jack Reacher.
Jack Reacher.
Mm-hmm. I read the first one of those books, and that's the typical thing because he's a military police officer. And when you read it, it's like all military police officers are like super commando spy level intelligence. I was like, no, that's not necessarily the case.
Right.
You know,
I started reading.
I think among the general public, there's a lot of these preconceptions because of the stereotypical examples they see in media and reading books and yada, yada, yada. And if you want something a little more realistic, you pay attention to stuff like that.
I started reading Mark Cameron's, I think it's called National Security, about the same time that I started reading the first Gray Man book, and that was a couple of months ago. And the Mark Cameron's character is Jericho Quinn, and he is an Air Force OSI agent. And I've met some OSI agents and talked to some. I just have a really hard time lining up the OSI guys that I knew and talked to the character that Quinn is, because Quinn is, the way Cameron writes Quinn is he's like almost like an operator, almost like out of DevGru, where he can do all this really kind of outside the wire stuff. And I'm sure that those OSI guys that do that kind of stuff, but I don't know that it's
OSI is basically just FBI of the Air Force.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's the same thing with SWAT people do. Not every SWAT team member is like a Green Beret level operator. A lot of times, the SWAT teams vary a lot. You can have like the LAPD, which have a huge SWAT team. Then you can have like SWAT teams where they basically get a few extra rounds to shoot every month and get called out, and so there's a lot of variability.
Well, I think
my
going
wife
back to
loves
your
that show with the LAPD SWAT guys. They're also good looking, and they've got.
And they all wear their. Was it the one where they all wear
Why
their?
do they have 37 TV screens in their in their talk? That's what I want to know.
I never watched the series, but there was one that was on a while back, and they all wore their gear all the time. You ever see that one?
Right.
They're walking down the hallway in full gear. I'm like,
all the time.
no,
and
They
all
don't
their
do that. They don't do that on this one, but I mean, it's just it's one of those turn your brain off at the door shows.
all their shirts are schmedium.
Right.
you were just,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Josh is getting ready to say something, and
Now I can't remember what I was going to say.
oh God,
I can't remember.
from other side.
That's what I was going to say. Going back to your to the article, Josh's point about nobody wanting to read about the supply guys, but
Legitimate point. Yeah.
I think though that
you could.
yeah, you could, but I'm saying making if you want to tell that story, if you have somebody that you want, if you have a character like that, I think that they would make really interesting secondary characters because you can do different things with those characters. And the reason the predominant argument of the conversation, even the one you're making, Chuck, is that everybody wants to read the gung ho gun toting
operator,
like the operator guy, which is true. Most people that read the kind of military thriller stuff that we're talking about are looking to read that.
Right. That's part of the fantasy, being the badass, you know.
But yeah, because they weren't that. So they want to vicariously live through that character and do that. The same thing. I'm not an assassin and I don't want to be an assassin, but holy crap, I can read about it.
That was my first career choice growing up.
Yeah.
Really, it's trouble the guidance counselor in high school. You sure about this?
Are you sure?
I just really want to kill somebody.
You know, I think. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying that I think the cool thing is, and something that I have not done, but what I want to try to do in a future book is make one of those second supply guy or a maintenance guy or some character that I have met in real life that I know what they do, is try to personify them in a character in a book and make them cool. Like you can do different things with them, and I think that's interesting. An interesting aspect of writing. Everybody talks about the main characters, but Scott, your favorite number one question used to be, what was your favorite secondary character to write?
I think secondary characters are very, very, very important, and yeah, I do. And you know, talking about all this, I think like with your supply guy or whatever, the way wars seem to work now, and of course I've never been overseas or served, so I'm going by what other people have told me and what I've read, is that just because they're a supply guy does not mean they haven't been in some traumatic shit.
True.
You know, because you could get a vehicle. I mean, you could be somebody who's not in a combat MOS and have served in combat the way the theaters are set up. So you could have, they might not have like Navy SEAL training, but they might have something in their character that developed through some of the stuff they went through. So I think you could go a little bit deeper, less obvious with your military heroes.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially since, we've been over in the sandbox for what, 20 some odd years now. I mean, I separated right before Desert Storm. Mm-hmm. So I got out a long time ago, and I never actually went overseas. I actually got recalled on inactive reserve to cover the shop while the rest of my old unit went over to Kuwait. And so I never actually got to go, but what am I trying to say? I am trying to say that I think it would be like an interesting character would be one that went through basic, learned to shoot, learned how to camp and do all the stuff, but never put it to use. And then something crazy happens in their life and they're trying to fucking remember.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. When I went through how did you do that? And then like screwing up left and right because they can't remember.
Right.
They remember how to shoot because they did a lot of that, but how did you pitch? How did you make that snare for the rabbit? I can't.
Land navigation.
Yeah, and like getting that. I think that would be an interesting as hell character.
I did that a little bit with Orphan Wars because I wanted the character not to be a soldier, but he needed to have but he's obviously going to be in some fighting, and so he needed to have something in his background. So he was in the reserves, and then his best friend kind of went the other way and went full time, and they kind of come into conflict. But so he had a little bit of that training far in his background, and he was going to go in as a pilot, but he had some incidents flying over some nude beaches, and so they got in trouble, and then he wound up in a different unit. But anyway, yeah.
I like how Thomas says, so Thomas, do you want to kill people or raise bunnies? Well, I'm allergic to bunnies and probably should not handle firearms for the same reason my cousin should not have a driver's license.
Beautifully vague.
Kitlin says, beware of the battleship cooks. True.
Yeah.
True. Steven Seagal made the cook look badass.
The cook was pretty tough in that show. Well, and you also got the everyman a rifleman in the Marine Corps. So
right. And like I said, in this day and age, coming out of 20 years in the sandboxes over there, it's not hard to find somebody who, no matter what MOS they're in, who's seen some shit, and it's totally understandable.
One of the things that I've noticed too, one of the things I hope changes soon is the penchant to show either military or cops as like inept, like they don't know what they're doing or like they're confused about things, because most of the people that I know doing their job know how to do their job, and most of that stuff happens in TV, but like in books, having competent characters, whether they're in secondary or tertiary characters, like having the cop like in the character, if your character is trying to get away from the cop and they do something stupid like turn the wrong direction or trip, and that allows your your character to get away, like that stuff, that's like eye rolling, right? Like
and that's exactly what we were talking about before, like the guy not solving his own problem,
right? Exactly.
There's if you outsmart the cop just because he happens to be another human being with the same kind of brain as you,
right?
Well, then that's okay. But no, having some Deus Ex Machina kind of shit where he just forgets to tie his shoe or whatever.
Well, they just
easy button stuff.
Forget to like there was a scene in Yellowstone. There's not many of these scenes in there where they're looking for this bear, and they all go up. They ride up on their horse. He goes, "Give me the rifle." He goes, "I thought you were going to get the rifle." I'm like, "Really? You guys? None of you brought a rifle?" And considering in the rest of this show, they all carry rifles all the time.
I'm sorry. If I was going out after a bear, I'd have a rifle, and I would make sure everybody else had a rifle.
Yeah,
bear.
One of my favorite Far Side comics was a cop, like you're talking about the cops, the inept cops, and it had these two cops, and it had this person sitting down, and the cop is interviewing him, and he says, "Well, sir, he was taller than you, better looking, better shaped, and clearly smarter than you because you haven't caught him yet." You get the description from the victim.
That's awesome.
That's how you feel sometimes you talk to people.
Patricia says, for a post-World War II anthology, I researched spies who didn't fit the James Bond, Jason Bourne category. A lot of the World War II wireless operators were very young and had a survival rate of around 3 months.
Oh, yeah.
I just rewatched We Were Soldiers the other day, and I was reminded.
The Mel Gibson one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It reminded me about the what was the quote about officers' survival rate stepping off a chopper was like less than a second or something like that, and that movie I watched it. I think it'd been probably 6 or 7 or 8 years in between viewings, and I forgot how brutal is not the right word, but like just how savage that show is.
Is that the one with Tom Elliott in that? He's the sergeant. What's this? I can't remember who the sergeant
Sam
was.
Elliott.
Sam Elliott.
Elliott.
Sam Elliott. When he tells him they try to give him an M16, he goes, "Nah. By the time I need one, there'll be plenty of them lying around."
Yeah, and then he didn't. Yeah. What I like, one of the things that I picked up about that show, which again, I try to learn something every time I watch or read something. And one of the things I picked up about watching that show was they made a kind of a meme scene about one of the younger sergeants, Visceral. There you go. Visceral. Thanks, Rick. Always coming through in a clutch. One of the main scenes, one of the main meme scenes, I call it meme because it's kind of a ha-ha scene where the younger sergeant is walking past Sam Elliott's character. And I can't remember what rank he was, command sergeant major maybe. Could be wrong. I think it maybe just be sergeant major. But anyway, he walks by and he says, "Good morning, Sergeant Major," and like twice, the Sam Elliott's character is like, "What's fucking good about it?" or say, some just really grumpy, like he's the gruff sergeant, right? Well, then later on in the movie, after they've been getting blown to shit and they have kind of a lull and they survive, the Sergeant Major tells the sergeant, who's also barely survived, he said, "That is a good day." And that was like a really, like, it wasn't like, it didn't make the movie, but it was one of those goosebump moments where you're like, that is a cool little scene that they set up an hour before.
Because that was, I remember that now. There was that interaction where he would always ask him, or he'd say, "Good morning," and they'd have that exchange like multiple times throughout the movie. Yeah.
I thought that was phenomenal. I thought that was really well done, and I forgot about that until I watched it.
That's good writing, good delivery by the actors too, as well.
Let's see. Guy says, "How about the Finnish sniper that killed 500 Russians in 3 months?"
I can never remember that. I can never pronounce his name. It's like it's the one that Richard Fox made me research to write Winter.
Is that the one that the Enemy of the Gates movie is based on?
No, it's like Silo or Simo.
But yeah, I think that's the Enemy of the Gates guy.
That was a great
also
movie
like too. That. I also like the quotes in that movie too.
The scene where he's shooting the radio wire.
Simo Haya, I'm probably pronouncing it wrong. Simo Haya is the Finnish sniper, and he like lost half of his face, and he was one he would like hold snow in his mouth to like reduce the amount of steam that he made so they couldn't see him, and very deadly.
Any of you bastards call me grandpa, I'll kill you. That was a great quote from We Were Soldiers. That was a great quote.
Anyway, you're talking about the sniper Enemy at the Gate.
Well, I think that is the sniper that the one in Enemy of the Gates is Enemy at the Gates is based on. Because in the beginning of the movie, he eats snow before he shoots a wolf. So I think that movie was really good. Had some good suspense. Man, there's so many good war movies. I made a post in the group the other day, and a lot of people responded with movies that I hadn't seen. Let me see if I can find a couple of them, because they were where's groups at?
Yeah, there was a bunch.
It was funny. I posted like the week before. I said, "What's your favorite tragedy?" And of course, 7 isn't technically a tragedy, but in my mind, I was thinking the
main fucking tragic.
Ending. Well, that's what my thing is. It was a tragic ending, and it's not technically a tragedy, but I was like, that's tragic, and that post didn't get any steam at all. But then when I posted, "What's your favorite war movie?" that one got like 100 or so responses. Now I can't.
Well,
find
we skew pretty hard in the military.
That is true.
Direction.
That is true.
Military sci-fi fans and stuff like that. So.
A couple of people said Kelly's Heroes, and I've never seen Kelly's Heroes. I probably should.
I don't know if I know that one.
Is there a movie about raising bunnies?
Or kicking coyotes?
Guy says C-SPAN is my favorite tragedy. Hacksaw Ridge was really good. Glory was really good. Did you guys ever see 1917, the new one that came out?
Yes. Yeah,
no, I did not actually.
That was good.
I heard it was really
that was a really good movie. Man, I no spoilers, but holy shit, there was a point,
intense.
It was probably halfway. Probably wasn't quite halfway through, and I'd seen the scene in the trailer, and I thought I knew what was coming, and then shit happened. I was like, I did not see that coming at all, and it was brutal. But that movie was.
What was the tank one with Brad Pitt and Shia
Fury?
LaBeouf?
Was it Fury?
I saw that one a few times. Yeah, Fury.
I haven't seen that one. I need to watch that one.
That one's really good too.
It's pretty good.
Tom says he's working on a Coyote screenplay.
He should. Everybody should have a Coyote screenplay in their drawer in case somebody asks for it.
Corey says Saving Private Ryan is his favorite. Yeah, man, that's a great movie.
First 20 minutes of that one is like, holy shit.
It's insane how well done that. See,
I'm telling you.
And
I was explaining this. Go ahead.
I don't think that every movie needs to be that. What's the word?
Visceral.
Visceral. But holy shit, they did that really well.
Well, they definitely set the tone.
I was talking. I can't remember why we got onto the topic, but I was talking to my
So,
wife
something
about
kind of hard to do. I'm losing my connection.
Yeah, you're.
Okay, I'm back. I'm back. Go ahead.
back.
Okay.
Was the scene where the in Saving Private Ryan where he goes and he's supposed to like bring ammunition, but he stops because he's scared and he comes up the stairwell and he runs into that German and they get into a fight and they have this knife fight and it comes down to just
that's the most
brutal
brutal scene, dude.
Yeah, it comes down to just a matter of strength.
And the guy's like, shh, shh.
Yeah.
I was like, holy.
Yeah. And I remember that scene. One, it was a good scene, but I remember it because I think it's pronounced Pavel Tastellini. He's a big kettlebell fitness guru. He uses that scene to market. It's like, you don't want to be not the one you died because you weren't strong enough to push that knife away.
Yeah.
And so I watched that lots of times when it was coming, but then after the advent of MMA, I'm like, why didn't you just fucking hip toss him to the side? Why are you sitting there having a contest of strength with this dude? He's going to kill you.
Yeah, exactly. Don't put yourself in that position.
Yeah.
Always fight dirty.
But it was a tough scene for sure.
Patricia says
brutal.
1917 had a cool effect of a one long shot, and that's true. That one thing I liked that was very interesting about that movie was the one shot effect, and it wasn't technically one shot. It was shot so that it seemed like to the viewer that there was never a cut. Except at one point there was a cut where he falls asleep, but other than that, it's almost a seamless shot all the way through.
Really?
I was watching.
There's no slash cut transitions to another location or anything like that.
It's the first scene. The camera opens up and these guys are sitting by a tree, and that whole long pan scene is like a 12-minute pan. Before there's some movie magic that happens. It's not actually a single cut film, but he said that the director said that the in some of the behind the scene shots is like doing the race through the city. He has a firefight with some Nazis in the city, and they rehearsed that like for 3 weeks before they actually shot it, because every time they had to reset, it took them like 7 hours to reset because of everything that they had, like explosions.
I can't
and
imagine. Wow.
It's really good. If you haven't watched it, check it out. It is super good.
No. I heard it was really good.
About the same time that came out, there was one that we also watched, and it was they took actual footage from World War I and they colorized it, and then they smoothed out the jerkiness of it and like slowed it to like the timing so people would like look like they're walking naturally, and then they added voices and narrations, and they made a whole movie out of that. That was really good too. It's very interesting. Totally different.
Netflix had a World War II in color series a couple of years ago. I don't know if it's still on there, but that was really interesting to watch too.
Yeah.
Anyway, we got kind of on a sidetrack there. That's okay. That's what we do here on the show.
It is.
I think this Friday, Lauren and Kayleen are going to have Stephen Rhett on the Writer's Journey.
Lauren won't be there.
Oh, that's right. Lauren won't be there.
I will probably be stepping in her place, and maybe a couple other people. I'm not sure. But yeah, talking to Stephen Rhett about various publishing things.
About deadlines.
I don't know if we should kick Corey Gillum for this or not. He says, does the opening of the Revenge of the Sith count? I mean, it's close. It's close.
Really,
talking tragedy?
The prequels in general.
Hey, the prequels are better than the sequels. Let's just say the prequels are better than the sequels. On that. Everybody, thank you guys for coming out, hanging out with us on this awkward time for our live show. I'm not sure if we're going to keep this time or we're going to go back to the mornings, but I kind of like doing it in the afternoon, so maybe we'll keep it on this time. We'll be back next Monday. I don't know what we're going to talk about because that's how extra.
We'll think of something by then. We're going to have a detailed plan, a
detailed outline. We're going to do it all in
Plottr.
Plottr.
Use Plottr to do that. Yes.
Speaking of which, check out. Hey, that's a good segue. Check out that link. We get a 20% little kickback for the show, and that helps us with hosting and a whole bunch of other stuff. So everybody that come and hang out with us today, thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. We appreciate it. Thank you for the 50,000 downloads on Podbean. That's amazing.
Awesome.
And I think that's actually just Podbean. I don't think that is everywhere. I think that's just Podbean.
I wonder what the number would be for everywhere. You should do the math.
I'll have to check it out. I have to look.
Yeah.
Regardless, thank you everybody for hanging out with us. We will be back next week. We're going to talk about some reading. We're going to talk about some writing, and of course, everything in between right here on Keystroke Medium. Peace.